Hello everyone and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. 2 weeks ago in Dusseldorf I found a record which I have been looking for about 4 years now. 4 years ago my sister came over to introduce me to her then new boyfriend who was a avant-garde musician here in the Netherlands. And he walked into my living room to my vinyl collection and he asked me, "Do you have anything by Skip Spence?" I said, "Well, Skip Spence, it does ring a bell, but do you have a lead?" He said, "Well, he played in Moby Grape for a short while." And I was fascinated because you rarely hear people talking about Moby Grape. As a matter of fact, this was the second time I heard somebody talk about Moby Grape. And the first time I heard somebody talk about Moby Grape was a Dutch journalist who was a music journalist starting in the early 60s. I mean, one of the major music buffs from the Netherlands. So this was the second time I heard somebody talk about Moby Grape, but this guy was in his early 20s, so what was going on? And he said, "Well, Skip Spence," and he was just excited that I had some records by Moby Grape. He said, "Skip Spence is my true hero, my true idol, and he is my main inspiration." And then I got interested because I already loved Moby Grape. And I started Googling. And he said, "You know what? If you're going to Google Ore." And it's credited to Alexander Spence. And I have it here now. But this is not an original because originals go for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. This is the 2000 Sunday's pressing. And even that was tough to find because you rarely come across this album. And he said, if you ever find this album, that's the rare Alexander Skip Spence masterpiece. And then he started telling about Skip Spence. What an extraordinary life this man had. Because this was a Canadian musician, and when he traveled to San Francisco, within no time he became the rhythm guitar player in the mid to late 60s. We're talking about that, of this band, Quicksilver Messenger Service. Now, this album is also in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die, and it's one of the finest moments in the late 60s psychedelic acid rock from San Francisco. As a matter of fact, the entire late 60s San Francisco hippie scene. A wonderful album. Now, he's not on this album, but he started off being good enough to be a rhythm guitar player for Quicksilver Messenger Service. Now, that was not only the big San Francisco band he was in, because after Quicksilver Messenger Service, Jefferson Airplane asked him to audition as a drummer. Now, Skip Spence had never drummed before, but there must have been something going on which they heard, this man has a certain sense, a certain rhythm, a certain emotion, let's give it a shot. And they hired him. He was part of Jefferson Airplane on this album, their first album. Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. Now, this is a great, great album, and Skip Spence is the drummer here. He left after this album, but drumming on this one was not the only mark he made on Jefferson Airplane, because a year later, when Jefferson Airplane made their big masterpiece, Surrealistic Pillow, they would release 3 singles. And you'll most probably know 2 of them. White Rabbit, Somebody to Love, and their first single, My Best Friend. Now, Skip Spence isn't playing on that. He wrote it. He wrote My Best Friend. Now, that's quite remarkable. So, now, we're in 1967, and he's good enough to be the rhythm guitar player for Quicksilver Messenger Service. He's good enough to be the drummer for Surrealistic Pillow, and he's good enough to write a song for Surrealistic Pillow. That's quite an amazing story. But that's not it. That's not it. Then, in San Francisco, they started this super group. Or at least, we cannot call it a supergroup. The title supergroup was given to me when I talked to this Dutch journalist, Jan Donkers, who is a very well-known journalist over here in the Netherlands, and he has been working with all the great talents. And when I talked to him about a couple of years ago, this must have been 5 years ago, I started working on a documentary about Melanie Safka, who recently passed away, and I was writing the documentary plan together with Jan Donkers. And we started talking about the San Francisco late 60s scene, and he said, "Oh, the Grateful Dead are overestimated." He didn't even enjoy Jefferson Airplane that much. He didn't like Quicksilver Messenger Service, but perhaps I'm paraphrasing because if you're seeing this young, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I know at least I'm 100% for sure that he thought the Grateful Dead was overrated. So I said, what kind of band is good from that era? And he said, the best one of the best live bands ever. Moby Grape. And he saw them play live, and it was one of the most mesmerizing shows ever. These guys were so incredibly skilled. They were so good. And if you put on this record, you will know why. This is so vibrant. It's so incredibly lively. It is one of the masterpieces coming from the hippie movement. But why should people be introduced to it like that? Why do we already know it? Well, Moby Grape's story is a documentary or a film in itself. They had so much bad luck. The day this record got released, and when they released their singles, they released all the singles in one day. They had bad publicity because there were some underage groupies in the back of a van. There were all sorts of incidents. The story of Moby Grape is one of bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. But all the big musicians were looking at them because they were amazing. They had skills and creativity and melodies and good songwriting. And Skip Spence wrote 3 songs on this album. They were among the top of the San Francisco scene. But it was just a case of bad luck. Or like Neil Young recalled, Neil Young was in the room when the management talks to Moby Grape about the value or the copyright of the name, and he was present when the band members sold the name to the manager. And Neil Young was just sitting in a corner. He could not get involved. It wasn't his band, but he thought, "Oh man, this is such a bad decision." And it was a bad decision. It was a tough journey for Moby Grape, and they are mostly now known amongst music fans. This is a mark in Skip Spence's career, but I don't think it's even the biggest mark. Late 1968, he made a solo album. Now, it must be said that while in Moby Grape, Skip Spence was having a lot of problems with drugs. He used psychedelics, and he did not respond well to them. He got into very bad trips. There was even an occasion in which I believe he got an axe to open the hotel door of the drummer of Moby Grape. He was hallucinating. He was taken into mental hospitals very often. So the question, is he a madman or is he brilliant? Well, I'll answer it with this album in my hands. He was a brilliant madman. He was a brilliant madman. On this album, he plays all the instruments himself, and he sings. And I had not heard this album before, like in a digital form or anything, until I bought it 2 weeks ago. And the moment I put it on, I listened through it all the way, put it on another time, because this is one of those moments which I hear something that is so unique. It's so gorgeous. His voice is uncomparable. There is a low, slow quality to it, but there's also a certain playfulness. It is not to be compared to anything at all. And all these songs are written so brilliantly. The sound on here is just mesmerizing. If you're considering that this was somebody of whom people knew he was or might be a genius, but the record company never invested a lot of money in there, they nevertheless got to the point that this sounds like it's a brilliant production. So many things went right during this. And some people would call it a challenging listening, but I disagree. I think the warmth of it and the full sound and the incredible melodies. You know, this is avant-garde. This has an acid hippie element in there, but it also has a beautiful, warm folk element. A very strongly rooted, earth-like quality that just really draws me in. It's not psychedelic like what Syd Barrett did or what Pink Floyd was doing. It's different and completely unique in its own right. And this Sunday's pressing, I can't compare it to an original, but it sounds incredible. This is one of those masterpieces I'm putting up on the wall to look at because this record means the world to me. So, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you know of Skip Spence? Or will you start listening to Skip Spence after this video? Please let me know. Leave a comment below and I'll see you in my next video.